Good morning, this is Business Live with me, Ian King. UK supermarkets have just enjoyed their busiest Christmas since before the pandemic, according to figures published this morning. Kantar, the marketing data and analytics company, said that during the 4 weeks to Christmas Eve, Britain's made 488 million trips to the supermarkets. That's the 4 weeks to Christmas Eve, and that's the largest number at Christmas since pre-pandemic times. They said a record £13.7 billion passed through the tills of grocery retailers. Among individual retailers, the German discounters Lidl and Aldi grew their market share by the most, although that is likely to be largely as a result of new store openings. Of the traditional Big Four, Sainsbury's fared best, growing its market share in the 12 weeks to Christmas Eve from 15.5% to 15.8%. Well, joining me now is Fraser McKevitz, Head of Retail and Consumer Insight at Kantar. Fraser, welcome to you. Obviously, on the face of it, this is a big rise in sales, but it's largely in line with the consumer inflation that you note during the month. So this is largely flattered by inflation.
Yes, the £13.7 billion that flowed through the tills, the most we've ever seen, is flattered a little bit by inflation. But there is a good news story in the inflation numbers. So inflation's currently running at 6.7% in grocery, which is down considerably. The last time we brought these numbers out 4 weeks ago, it's actually the largest fall we've ever seen in inflation. So that's contributed to the growth, even though things are looking a little bit better for customers out there. But there have been some other good signs as well. You've already mentioned the fact that footfall was up to its at Christmas, was its greatest since December 2019, and volumes were up slightly too. So I think the sense is, without going mad, there is still a cost of living crisis out there. People wanted to celebrate Christmas properly this year, and that seems to be borne out in these figures.
Yes, quite striking, though, that one-third of items you note that were sold during the period were on promotion.
Yeah, ever since 2014, supermarkets have been cutting back on the number of deals that they've offered because they've wanted to give promotions and value in different ways. That has reversed in recent months, and it was actually quite a promotionally led Christmas. Third of items, that still seems to be going up, and there was a huge amount of money to be saved for shoppers who, although they wanted to celebrate Christmas, could not go mad. So they're still trying to buy the own label, and they're still increasingly looking for those deals, and every single retailer had more deals available on the shelves for them to buy.
Now, people always trade up at Christmas, and you point out that things like Taste Difference at Sainsbury's, Tesco's Finest, Morrison's the Best, that accounted for 5.7% of all grocery sales during the period. How does that compare with previous years?
So that is the highest ever. It was up from 5.4% last year, which might not sound much, but when you're talking about £13.7 billion in 4 weeks, it actually comes to a huge amount of money. So the best part of £1 billion was spent on those premium own label lines. And they're very, very popular with customers. And of course, they're popular with retailers because it allows them to talk about what they see as the quality cues for their brand and allows people to spend that little bit more at Christmas. And of course, Christmas is about trying to get shoppers to trade up. That is what retailers are trying to do, and mostly customers are willing to do it.
Looking at the individual performances, I mean, one thing that jumped out at me in the numbers, the 12 weeks to Christmas Eve, Tesco's sales went above £10 billion. Is that the first time that's happened?
Yeah, that is the first time we've seen that. And Tesco did pretty well. And Sainsbury's actually did very well as well out of the two traditional retailers. Now, people tend to trade up not only in items, but also some of their share of goods. They trade up in supermarkets around Christmas and tend to go to the discounters perhaps a little bit less than they would have done earlier in the autumn. But Aldi and Lidl will both be celebrating. Even given that context, it's the biggest ever Christmas for both Lidl, who led the pack, and then Aldi a little bit far behind them. So I think they will be the four supermarkets that come out of this season feeling the best about it. And of course, we're just about to enter, the PLC companies, we're about to enter into the reporting period as well. So we'll hear from Tesco and Sainsbury's in the coming week or so.
Indeed. I mean, just on Aldi and Lidl, is this performance largely flattered by new store openings? I mean, we don't really have a handle on how they're doing on a like-for-like basis.
No, we don't have that data, but what we do know is that they have been, sort of pretty much in the last year or so, there's been a contribution from stores. That is undeniable, but there's also been a contribution from the existing stores. So they're still really popular. More people than ever shopped in a discounter this Christmas, but their growth is definitely slowing, and we'd expect to see it slow into the coming years, but they're not going away. The discounters are not over. They're now an established part of the market. best part of 20% market share between them, so they're here for the long run.
All right, Fraser, got to leave it there. Good to see you this morning. Thank you. Some other business news stories for you now. And Ryanair said this morning that a number of online travel agents, including Booking.com, Kiwi and Kayak, had suddenly removed its flights from sale on their websites in early December. Europe's biggest airline said it welcomed the move, which it believes reflects pressure from consumer protection agencies and a response to the recent Irish High Court ruling that stopped Flightbox from taking data from Ryanair.com. The airline said this would not materially affect its sales or profits for the year. Ryanair carried 181.8 million passengers in December, up 13% on December 2022. The South Korean carmaker Hyundai and its affiliate Kia said today they expect global sales this year to be up 2% on 2023. The pair, the world's third largest car maker by volume after Toyota and Volkswagen, are targeting global sales of 7.44 million vehicles in 2024, with most of the growth coming at Kia, which will be launching a new electric vehicle this year. They sold 7.3 million vehicles in 2023. That was lower than the 7.52 million they had been targeting. And one of Thames Water's biggest shareholders has cut the value of its stake in the business by nearly 2/3. The university's superannuation scheme, which owns just under a fifth of Thames Water's parent company, valued its shareholding at £364.4 million as at the end of March last year. That was down from £955.8 million the previous year. Well, the news comes 3 weeks after Thames Water told MPs it did not at that time have the finances to cover its £190 million debt payment due in April this year. Well, equity markets in the Asia-Pacific region continued their disappointing start to the new year, with most indices in the region finishing to the downside overnight. The ASX in Sydney suffered its worst one-day fall since mid-October. Well, in Europe, here's how stocks have traded this morning, all of them in negative territory. Talking points today include the chip equipment maker ASML. That's off 2% in Amsterdam after the Dutch government partially revoked its export licence for the shipment of some machines to China. Well, in London, the FTSE 100 also in negative territory right now, off 0.4%, with the mining heavyweights weighing on the index on lower commodity prices. The leading blue chip fallers right now are, in fact, both the miners, Anglo American and Fresnillo. To the upside, well, both Tesco and Sainsbury's are trading positively following that Kantar data we've just been discussing. Marks and Spencer, which isn't included in the Kantar data, is ahead by more than 1% as well. The market looking out for a good Christmas performance there. The leading blue chip gainer, though, in percentage terms right now is GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, up 1.5%. That's on supportive broker comment. Outside the FTSE, the defence contractor Babcock has continued its good start to the year, up another 3%. It was up about 1.5% yesterday. Lower down, Hercules Site Services is ahead by 2% on a contract win. On the foreign exchange markets, well, the big story yesterday was dollar strength, and that dollar has largely held on to most of yesterday's gains. Pound little changed against the greenback. It's up by 0.25% against the euro right now. The single currency, meanwhile, off by another 0.25% against the dollar. As for the oil price, well, that's hit its lowest level today since the 14th of December. The market focusing on sagging demand. It's staged a modest recovery in the last few minutes. A barrel of Brent crude currently changing hands at $75.92 a barrel. That's more or less unchanged, quite frankly. Well, joining me this morning is Victoria Scholar, Head of Investment at Interactive Investor. Victoria, good to see you this morning. The Kantar numbers, obviously good news for Tesco and Sainsbury. M&S isn't in that, but most people in the market seem pretty convinced M&S has had a good Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely. We're waiting for its update later this month. Now, clearly it was a standout stock market winner of 2023. It's hit a 5-year high, valuing the company at over £70 million. And it is expected to have a really strong Christmas performance. We've already seen that shares have started this year well. They're up by over 10% over the past month. And analysts at BNP Paribas have actually put it as one of their top stock picks for 2024, which is a pretty strong endorsement on the back of last year's price action. We know that the CEO has been spearheading this major turnaround plan. He's been investing in clothing and home, which typically lags food, but it has been catching up. Also, we know that it's been focusing on those larger department store style shops instead of having lots of little stores scattered around. And so the aim is for continued growth of the company, of course, this year, going against that kind of broader trend we've seen in retail, which is more of a focus on e-commerce.
Now, over on Wall Street last night, Victoria, funny old session, really. I mean, the tech stocks, which were obviously behind last year's big gains, were all to the downside, particularly Apple.
Yeah, that's right. The stock plunging by nearly 4%. This was on the back of an analyst downgrade from Barclays to underweight, which is pretty unusual for Apple. And it did a slight tweak to its target price on the stock, changing it from $161 to $160. So that's below where it's currently trading. And Barclays is saying that it's had a lackluster performance in terms of iPhone sales, in terms of iPhone 15, and then that could potentially pave the way for weaker iPhone 16 sales. Also, it hasn't seen the bounce back that it hoped for in other hardware products like Macs and iPads and wearables. And then its services business also will be decelerating in terms of growth because of regulatory scrutiny, according to Barclays. So while this was very much a stock market winner last year, and the stock is up by about 400% over the past 5 years, there is the potential for that pace of growth, at least, to slow down a bit in the year ahead.
Well, talking about broker influence moves, there's been an interesting one in Europe today, Maersk.
Yes, that's right. Goldman Sachs has raised Maersk to neutral from a sell, so still not a buy. But the analyst team is anticipating a sharp increase in freight rates, which it says will benefit this shipping giant, which of course has been caught up in the turmoil in the Red Sea. We've seen quite impressive price action over the last month for Maersk. And now this endorsement has provided another tailwind to the stock today, which is up by about 5%. But it's had a difficult year of price action, but perhaps we're past the lows now.
And briefly, Victoria, Entain, interesting move there. Obviously, they parted company with the CEO just before Christmas.
Yeah, that's right. We're seeing that the stock is rallying today on the back of an appointment of a non-executive director, Ricky Sandler, who's from Eminence Capital, which is an activist investor in the company. Now, last summer, Sandler criticised the then CEO, who's now been ousted. So clearly, he's having a lot of influence on the company and will help to appease some of the opinions of the other activist shareholders that also may have wanted her to be ousted from that top job. Now, there's the potential that this could pave the way for a divestment of its stake in the US betting joint venture BetMGM, which is something that he'd previously suggested. And it looks as though he is going to be pretty instrumental in terms of decision-making going ahead. We already know that he's going to be involved in the appointment of another director to the board. So the hopes is that after a tough time for Entain, these changes at the top are going to help drive the stock in a more positive direction in 2024.
We shall see. Victoria, good to see you this morning. Thank you. Now, the FTSE 100, the index that ranks the 100 most valuable companies listed on the London Stock Exchange, is 40 today. The index quickly became recognised around the world, and promotion to it is an accolade much sought after by companies and their boards. Relegation, similarly, is frequently an embarrassment. Well, just 14 of the FTSE's original constituents are still in the index, among them Shell, BP, Tesco, Lloyds Bank and British American Tobacco. A further 12 remain in the index as part of larger entities. For example, the old Commercial Union and General Accident are now both part of Aviva. Well, joining me now is Mark Makepeace, the founding chief executive of FTSE International. Mark, great to see you this morning. It feels like I've been talking to you for most of those 40 years, I must say. What were the origins of the FTSE?
Well, the origins go back, I mean, it was launched in '84. And at that time, London was competing with New York. New York and Chicago had introduced futures and options. And London wanted to introduce futures and options on its market. So it sent a couple of its executives out to Chicago to try and understand how it worked. And they decided that they needed a new index to support these new instruments. So they designed the FTSE 100. And really, it was 100 of the biggest companies because on a trading screen at the time, or the old stock exchange system called Topic, you could only fit 100 security names. So that's the reason why they wanted 100 stocks. and it was tested with the market. The life market got involved, the actuaries got involved. The only person not involved was the Financial Times. And when it was launched in January, it was launched as the SE 100.
Yes.
And of course, the FT had the FT30 at the time, and they wanted the futures to be based on the FT30. But the market wanted a better, broader index and chose the SE 100. So the FT then had to sort of get involved with the stock exchange, and it was a couple of months later that it was relaunched as the FTSE 100. So FT 500 times and SE, the London Stock Exchange.
Yeah, and what a brand it's turned out to be as well. I mean, it's not really that much of a barometer of UK corporate health, though, is it, Mark? Let's be honest.
No, over the years, it's the big international companies that have migrated to London. And it's those companies which have dominated the FTSE 100. And the other issue they had is that many of these companies, they're the old style of industries. You've got the big energy stocks, you've got big mining companies, you've got some of the big industrials, some of the big banks. And of course, that's not what is driving the markets today. When we look over to the US, we see companies that you've been talking about, like Apple and Microsoft and the big technology companies. I mean, Apple is now the same size in value as the whole of the FTSE 100. So it's technology that's driving the markets. And really, the FTSE 100 needs to consist of more companies that come from that technology background.
Indeed. I mean, that's really an issue for the whole London market, though. That isn't something that can be levelled at the door of the London Stock Exchange per se, or FTSE International.
No, it requires the combination of government, regulators, exchange, and also the market more broadly, because the UK is actually producing exciting fintech and new technologies. It's just at the moment, it's those companies are listing on the US markets because they want to be compared alongside the Apples and the Microsofts of the world. So I think we've got to do far more to encourage these types of businesses to list in London and make London their home. And I think that is not just the London Stock Exchange. That requires government assistance as well.
Absolutely. Now, cast your mind forward another 40 years. What do you think the FTSE will look like in 40 years' time? Will it even still be around?
It'll still be around. I think the energy companies will have completely changed. The energy companies will be focused on renewable energy, not oil and gas. Mining companies may well have disappeared or will have become trading vehicles. The pharmaceuticals would have become biotechs. We'll see the rise of new sort of digital service companies. And I think banks will change in that way. So I think we're going to see a huge amount of change. And I think the change will be positive for the FTSE 100 because the FTSE 100 has lagged the rest of the world. Since 2000, the FTSE 100 and the UK market has really underperformed the rest of the world. But that's because of the nature of the industries that are listed in the FTSE 100. So I think as these things change, and they will change, then the FTSE 100 and the UK market will perform in a stronger way compared to other markets.
Nice opportunity. Mark, we've got to leave it there. That's a nice upbeat note on which to end. Great to see you again, Mark. Thanks very much indeed for joining me. Cheers.
Thank you.
Still to come here on Business Live. No sign of the demand for bubble tea bursting as producers target the Middle East for expansion. Stay with us.
There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders, and now they're going to be arrested. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. What is feared that over 200 people might have died because of these landslides. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. This is one of the most sensitive areas of northeast Delhi where there's been clashes. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
It's like Emirates. It's like better. Fly Emirates. Fly better. Thank you.
Welcome back. Now, the remarkable growth of the bubble tea market shows no sign of slowing. The world's biggest player in the field, the Taiwanese company Gong has just signed its largest master franchise deal ever. Under the agreement, it will open more than 300 sites in the Middle East, with its first stores in Saudi Arabia set to open in April this year. I've been speaking to the global chief executive of Gong, Paul Rainish.
We're excited by it, a new deal for the Middle East. In fact, it's a 6-country deal. And the largest deal in Gong Cha's history, actually, over 300 stores we built across the next 10 years, with one of the best operators I've ever met in the Middle East, Shahir Foods Group, that currently run Dunkin' and Arby's, will now be launching Gong Cha. In fact, we're hunting locations now, and we'll be opening early Q2.
What makes the Middle East such an important target market for you?
It's really about supply and demand. I mean, consumers are seeking high-quality tea brands, and Gong Cha fits the bill. So we did a lot of consumer research with the local audience in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Everyone's saying, look, hey, we crave Gong Cha. We've seen it around the world. We know you guys are growing. Can you bring it to our market? And so we were delighted to do that. The research proved really well. People love the taste, the flavor, the quality of the tea. So we'll be launching in 2024.
There's a lot of other coffee and food-to-go brands targeting the Mideast right now. What makes it such a hot market?
Well, I've been traveling to the Middle East for 20 years. I mean, the growth is just extraordinary when you see what's happening, certainly in Dubai, but now in Saudi Arabia. I was in Riyadh about 3 weeks ago. Just an explosive growth there. And it's, people are actually now more affordable in terms of their appetite and ability for global brands. And in a way, this is a lot to do with our east to west story, as Gong Cha migrates from very successful business in the east, in Asia for 20 years, and now moving west.
I would kind of assume, possibly out of complete ignorance, that in the Middle East there are more coffee drinkers than tea drinkers, but evidently not.
Look, sure, coffee is a huge part of the daily ritual around the globe. But what we're finding is that people are migrating to take one of those occasions at least a day and choose tea. And if Gong Cha can be at the forefront of growth around the world, we'll steal those occasions. We're seeing that in the US particularly, as people are migrating from carbonated soft drinks into iced coffee. Now it's into iced tea. And 90% of our products are ice-based, and so people love that refreshing change. of high quality Gong Cha product.
Just before Christmas, you also signed 2 master franchise agreements for the Americas. What do you look for in a franchise partner?
Yeah, thanks. Look, again, 2 great deals. One for the Central Americas, 4-country deal with some great partners, and also the Pacific Northwest, so Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. Again, a proven operator. And I think that's the key answer is, can you operate the quality standards that Gong Cha demands and really our consumers demand? You're paying a premium price for a premium tea full of inclusions. Sure, we've got fun and flavor and texture, but it starts with great tea. And so operations is a critical factor to choosing the right franchisee. Second is the ability to access great real estate. In a beverage business, you want to be in the way, on the way, as we call it. So if you're commuting, you want to grab and go and get that beverage on the run. And then third is access to capital so you can grow quickly and create scale. And that means you have a good labor force. You can really, compound your profitability. So those 3 things: operations, capital, and great access to real estate.
I think you've now got more than 2,100 stores across the world. Do you have a number in your mind for where you'd like to be come the end of 2024?
Look, we just want to open a store a day in 24. In fact, in 2023, we opened over 300 stores. So we didn't quite hit that mark, but let's keep trying. So our team are all focused and dedicated on doing that. Open a store a day in 24. It's a great rally cry for the system, and I think we can get there.
Well, that's it from me for the time being. I'll be back with our afternoon edition at 4:30. Hope very much to see you then. My guests will include Michael O'Leary from Ryanair. In the meantime, do stay tuned. Wilf is back after this short break. See you later. Cheerio.